it seems to a lot of people like this is much more to do with sort of going after people who are viewed as opposed to the president, or who are in his crosshairs for some reason, rather than a real sense of government concern with the issue of mortgage fraud.
With me, Molly Ball, who's senior political correspondent for the Wall Street Journal in Washington. Good evening, Molly.
Good evening.
I was pretty alarmed earlier to hear the death penalty and Washington in the same sentence. There was a very lengthy cabinet meeting at the White House today. It went on for, 2.5 hours or so? There was a lot. It was a lot.
And it was quite a lot, yes.
And Trump announced, he wants to bring back the death penalty to Washington, D.C. for the first time in 43 years.
It'll be a crime-free city. By the way, speaking of that, anybody murders something in the Capitol, capital punishment, capital punishment. If somebody kills somebody in the Capitol, Washington, D.C., we're going to be seeking the death penalty. And that's a very strong preventative. And everybody that's heard it agrees with it. I don't know if we're ready for it in this country, but where you have it, it is, we have no choice. So in D.C. and Washington, states are going to have to make their own decision. But if somebody kills somebody, like you could have been killed, very lucky you didn't get killed, it's the death penalty, okay?
Well, in 1992, D.C. residents voted against reinstating capital punishment after formally repealing it in 1981. I mean, surely Trump's use of the National Guard in Washington should curtail the need to even talk about introducing the death penalty, shouldn't it, Molly?
It's a good point. And at this point, this is not a formal proposal. This appears to be simply the president thinking out loud, as he often does. And sometimes those musings get translated into actual proposals or executive orders, and sometimes they don't. Now, we know that Trump is a longtime proponent of the death penalty. During the campaign, he repeatedly said he believed that drug dealers should be executed. This is also not something that would be legal under the current state of the law, and not something that the administration has proposed or put forward in any concrete way. But this is a messaging campaign for President Trump. He wants to send a message to the American people, I think predominantly people who are not residents of Washington, but people across the country, that he is willing to do whatever it takes to keep the streets safe. And this is part of his law and order message that has been a part of his political brand from the beginning, and that he believes is a winning message for him.
How popular is the notion of capital punishment with American citizens?
That's a good question. I think the results are pretty mixed. I haven't looked at a poll on it today, but in general, it tends to be popular, but not overwhelmingly popular. The idea of the death penalty, now that can change depending on the particular case in which it's applied. And as you noted, it is not popular in Washington, which is an overwhelmingly liberal and democratic jurisdiction, where only 6% of the residents voted for Donald Trump.
I'm just looking at some polling actually, but the sort of clearest I've got is from October 2024. 53% of Americans in favour of the death penalty, but that number masks the considerable differences between older and younger Americans. More than half of young adults aged 18 to 43 now oppose the death penalty. So it is split across the ages there. I mean, is this being seen as sort of another thinly veiled attempt to punish the blue areas? We've seen the National Guard deployed in Washington, the threat to do the same in Chicago, New York City. Does this get grouped into that?
Yes, absolutely. We've seen Trump really emphasizing this tough on crime messaging in recent weeks. Some of his critics believe that he's trying to distract from other things that he's doing that are less popular, such as the so far unsuccessful negotiations with Russia or the continuing controversy over the Epstein files. Even in discussing the military deployments that he has rolled out, in Washington and earlier to Los Angeles, it is interesting to me that the president insists on talking about this in terms of curtailing crime when all of the evidence, all of our reporting is that the most of what they've been doing so far is actually immigration enforcement, is actually prosecute or detaining people for potential deportation who do not have legal status in this country, much more so than actually making arrests or addressing violent crime.
So, look, currently the death penalty is available to the federal government for some federal crimes like first-degree murders, but not for all murders, which is what sort of Donald Trump's leaning into there. Is that likely to change anytime soon?
No, to put it bluntly, no. Look, and this is a complicated situation in Washington, which, as you know, is a federally administered city in some regards, but also has some independence under a statute from the 1970s establishing home rule. So anything that DC has in terms of self-government is sort of at the pleasure of the federal government. And there are some questions even about the actions that Trump has already taken about whether those are legal and will be allowed to stand, given this partnership that the federal government has with the government of Washington, D.C. So it's a different situation in other cities which don't have anything like that kind of arrangement. And we've heard Trump already express some reluctance to make a deployment into Chicago as he had previously threatened, in part because that is a city with a Democratic governor who has expressed in very strong terms that he does not want such a deployment. So I think it is far too soon to see this as any kind of serious proposal versus just the president speaking as he frequently does in order to send a political message.
Okay. Look, away from political messaging, but we should note that the cabinet meeting went on for an awful long time, and afterwards questions from journalists, Donald Trump saying he wishes Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce a lot of luck after the singer and the NFL star announced their engagement. Now, that is obviously top of the agenda. In fact, I think one of the news networks broke away from live coverage of that cabinet meeting, didn't they, to announce this? Such is the excitement over there in the States.
Well, I also, for the record, wish Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce lots of luck. I think marriage is a wonderful thing, and they seem like two crazy kids in love. It is interesting, I suppose, that Trump issued a sort of pro forma greeting rather than going off on one of his anti-Taylor Swift rants.
Well, yeah, exactly.
He has been very negative toward her in the past, particularly since she endorsed his opponent in last year's campaign.
All right, let's move on to the Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook. Donald Trump, well, he says he's going to fire her. She's announced that she'll be filing a lawsuit against the Trump administration in response. Donald Trump had said he was firing her over unconfirmed allegations of mortgage fraud. He was asked whether he'll fight Lisa Cook's lawsuit while he was holding his cabinet meeting.
Oh, sure, always. You always have legal fights. Look, I had a legal fight that went on for years with crooked people, with very horrible people that have been found out now between John Ratcliffe and Tulsi and Pam. And I mean, the things that we found out, of course, it's a very, very sad group of people. But no, she seems to have had an infraction, and she can't have an infraction, and especially that infraction because she's in charge of, if you think about it, mortgages, and we need people that are 100% above board, and it doesn't seem like she was. Yep.
How is this being received? Because, of course, she denies all the allegations. There's no proof that she has committed mortgage fraud. And yet Donald Trump's moving in to either try and clear this up pretty quickly, or it is part of his sort of anti-Federal Reserve rhetoric.
Right. I think the tell here is that whenever Trump mentions this situation, he sort of gestures at this, as you say, so far unsubstantiated allegation of mortgage fraud. And then he proceeds to talk about how much he wishes the Fed would lower interest rates, which I think tells you what he's really concerned about here. And so on the one hand, I think this has been received with quite a lot of alarm, given that the independence of the Federal Reserve is very important to the financial system. On the other hand, we see that the markets have barely budged in response. perhaps because they don't seem to be taking it all that seriously. There was a Supreme Court case just this year that evaluated whether the president has the ability to fire members of supposedly independent boards that are part of the executive branch. And the Supreme Court basically said, yes, he can do that, but not at the Federal Reserve, basically articulating a rationale for the Fed being different in the type of independence that it is afforded in our system. So I'm not a lawyer or a legal expert, but that would seem to suggest that he may have more difficulty firing this particular person than others that he has fired from other ostensibly independent agencies so far in this term.
Yeah, her attorney is arguing that he's no authority to remove her from the Fed's Board of Governors. What do we know about her? Just tell us a little bit about Lisa Cook.
Well, she's viewed as she's a Democratic appointee to the Fed's governing board, one of many of the members of the board that sets the interest rates. I think her background is as an economist. She's a well-credentialed economist, like most of the members of that board, and these allegations of mortgage fraud are being pushed by a member of the Trump administration who has targeted a lot of Trump's enemies with this same accusation, essentially that they committed fraud by claiming two different homes that they owned as a primary residence, because you get preferential treatment for tax purposes on the home that is your primary residence versus a second home or an investment property or that type of thing. So the same accusation has been leveled at Trump enemies, I think it's fair to say, such as the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, and Senator from California, Adam Schiff. So it seems to a lot of people like this is much more to do with sort of going after people who are viewed as opposed to the president, or who are in his crosshairs for some reason, rather than a real sense of government concern with the issue of mortgage fraud.
Yeah, he insists she must resign. He said he found sufficient cause, Donald Trump, in the allegation of mortgage fraud to remove her from her position. But yeah, big questions about whether he can actually do that or not. Molly, it's great to have you with us. Thank you very much for running us through the latest coming out of Washington, D.C. at the moment. Molly Ball is senior political correspondent for the Wall Street Journal in Washington. Good to have you with us. Cheers.